This lecture is part of the Non-Gendered Polarities Future of Nations series of lectures. Now I jump to the final part of this super long super lecture about future of countries, possible future of countries in the times of climate shift. I've talked about a lot of things that could explain to you what is happening. You may say, I don't agree with it. Well, I'm not talking about agreements. I'm talking about energy, the way it flows. And my argument is that political movements and political changes come about more naturally than what we think. And then there are times when people try to control things, and then things do not go as intended. It may take decades, it may take 100 years, I don't know, 1,000 maybe, but things will tend towards being natural as opposed to being controlled. Controlled and manipulated. Right, so somebody's going to say, do we just let things be? No, we don't just lead to some sort of a random, natural, wild growth. We do something intentional, beautiful, benevolent, and caring. That takes into account the fundamental nature of a being. For example, we would design a very good, nice pond environment for a fish. And so that's intentional, beautiful, benevolent, caring design that takes care of the fundamental nature of fish. Give it as close to its most happy, natural habitat in your little pond. Or you could keep cows uh, you know, um, in a space where they can graze, where they can roam freely, where they can graze on more natural feed as opposed to very controlled, structured, manipulated. So natural doesn't have to be wild natural, it has to be designed natural, right? So there's wild natural and there's designed natural, where we are talking about human beings who have entered the picture, right? And who else designs? Animals do. Animals take hay and turn that into a nest, right? And that is design and structuring, which leads me to talk about biomimicry. We can shift our technological and development and scientific focus towards working with nature. Animals, when they design their nests, when they design the beehives, etc., employ a lot of science. There's when you start reverse understanding it, you would say, "Oh my, there's science to it. They do it in a certain season. They pick the right elements to build their nests or build their hives. There's maths to it. There's a design to it. There's patterning to it, even to spider webs, etc." So this is not without intention and without beauty and without caring for and being in alignment with biology. So human beings will need to just activate that mindset. And that comes from nurturing ourselves in the right way. Now, human beings have had a control mindset, I believe, and I'm just going to jump to the conclusion right now that we have the way countries look right now is like border to border, right? Here is a country, and then there is a country, and then there is another country, and this is country A, and this is B, and this is C, and this is D. And if you look at human populations, that they will be dispersed all over the nation in like a scattered fashion. A good scattering, bad scattering, depends upon their ecological factors, movements, and also design by humans. Politics, similarities and differences between different ethnicities and groups, right? So I have a emerging understanding I could be right. I could be wrong. Okay. My understanding is that our countries right now are like border to border. And if you cross over the border of another country, even into the wilderness, like you enter this country and you violated that if you don't have the visa or the permit to do so. How about we think of a different kind of Earth? Um, and that will require a lot of trust, a lot of letting go of control. In order to maintain control, we are having to develop and deploy a lot of military might and take resources from the earth which are being put into surveillance of citizens and controlling the earth and this and that. Sometimes this is possible with our existing technology, but then that is also propelling us towards being technology oriented and take resources away from biology. So we have technology on the one hand constructed, and then biology on the other hand, and then we need to tip into the favor of biology because biology means we exist, and technology don't doesn't necessarily means we exist. But we now have new movements like the transhumanist movement who are like, oh no, well, if our biology is depleting, we're just gonna transport our body into some kind of encapsulated or incorporate that into some kind of technological thing or even like a cognitive thing, a program, and voila, we're not going to have humanity anymore. We don't need that. We don't need a body. And that's weird. So, how about we work with biology? How about we work with our bodies and who we really are and look into a different kind of structuring? And the different kind of structuring is how about we concentrate populations in big clusters, and the cluster has a span, and then the rest of the area is sort of like wilderness, common wilderness. Which does bring me to a question that my own hypothesis is, or my own uh, proposition is bringing forth like, okay, how do we know that these three clusters are country A? Okay. And in between this country A, what do we have? My idea would be that between these three clusters, which identify themselves as part of the polity A, not a country A, polity a political entity A, and polity B, is somehow what we call God's land. Free wild wilderness. I think I'm talking about fiefdoms right now. And I'm not saying that we choose to make fiefdoms. I think we are going to tend towards that because of increased biological pressures. I think that could happen because the technology that we are deploying in order to monitor everything, in order to keep records, etc., that is taking a lot of energy from the electrical grid. Generating and maintaining electricity itself is requiring us to extract the world's resources at an accelerating pace, and also getting humans addicted to electricity and taking us away from performing biological functions. Electricity also has sometimes not so pleasant impacts upon our body, and I'm going to argue that it's really sucking at our soul. So some of those natives' ideas about um, technology really stealing our souls could be correct. I'm just putting it out there, right? I'm just thinking that eventually this idea just occurred to me, and I just wanted to make like maybe 2 minute reel, which has become like a hours long lecture, talking about how maybe we need to start focusing on the center. Now, even if we don't let go of countries' boundaries, I think we need to focus a lot on developing people, making them stronger. That'll have to happen, and that if we do need to maintain traditional boundaries is going to help reinforce those boundaries by focusing on the people. So definitely a focus on people and their strengths and their psyches and their mental health and their physical well-being is needed. That at least I'd argue for. Now, please focus in the middle instead of always and only looking at boundaries and thinking of your countries in terms of its expansion and its rivalry and control, etc., which is a legitimate focus. Like you need to like watch the boundaries. I'm not saying we don't. Even if we have wilderness, like we need to watch the boundaries of these little kingdoms and fiefdoms and polities or whatever it is, which are part of a super polity which once used to be a country. In my hypotheses or my postulate, my whatever it is. Um, we still need to focus on the center. And the more aligned people are, the more their aura sort of increases, the more their influence increases, the more they can just expand and even venture out because they got each other's back, you know. So their internal unity, their internal correction, caring for each other is going to allow them to go forth in the world and not shrink and implode, which they will if they don't care for each other. So that's that. And this is a major point that I wanted to come to because I just had a thought the other day. I had a thought that what if we let the wilderness of the world be? Let it be. All right, I got it here. What if we let the wilderness of the world be? What if we let lands regenerate and heal themselves? You know, people are trying to heal lands, restore lands, blah, blah, blah. I think we need to do a couple of things. I did talk about how the planet is heating up because it's choked. And one of the things that we need to do is to clear up the waterways and make sure that blockages wherever they are in the system, whether they are in the hardware of the system, like actual physical things, need to be cleaned up, and whether they are in the software of the systems, in our intentions, in our thoughts, in our policy, in our planning, they need to be cleared up. So we need to start resolving a conflict and all that, and just make things easy. Let the wilderness of the world be, if we can, let it be. And this is a proposition, right? In Instead of trying to sort of heal the entire planet, what if we restrict ourselves to certain well maintained regions and then let the rest of the planet heal itself? Can that be possible? Now, if some places are really badly depleted, maybe we need to give them like a lift up. That is happening. There are plantation drives around the world. Water healing, of course, that needs to take place because we need to pull our plastic out of waterways. That definitely needs to happen. We cannot let that work be assigned to nature. That is our problem. We need to pull ourselves back. Um, but even if we don't like really change the boundaries of countries, we need to at least pull back our interference into everything. One more thing, we need to focus on our inner selves, our inner beings, reducing our conflict, reducing our hunger, reducing our constant consumption, and be more wholesome, interdependent beings, which massively reduces our consumption, by the way. And we make ourselves more active. When we make ourselves more active, do labor with the hands, etc., then we don't need to depend a lot on extracting a lot of resources from the earth and then make them work for us. Also, that then takes me to the point of non-gendered polarities and why they are important for the health of humans and planets, because then we also need to do things such as um, work in daytime and sleep at night, because that is going to give planet and our bodies a massive rest. What I am really getting at is a healthier planet and humanity in a state of more rest, more trust, more ease, and not always strung up, always fighting, always trying to get ahead, be competitive, feeling threatened, giving threats to each other, milking ourselves and our bodies. What if the whole planet gets at rest and then there are still countries that are like, oh, no, 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 we gotta just tear through the earth, we need to go to another planet, we need to do that, we need to do this. I don't know, is that really necessary? Now, suppose all countries are okay with that. They're like, okay, go ahead, do what you want to do. But are your own people well enough for you to ignore your people at the bottom and then focus on the top tier of development? Say, oh, we're going to focus on going to Mars, so we're going to go to, extract minerals from Venus or whatever it is, and blah blah blah. I don't know, because I would want to focus on human beings a lot more. And then do we leave the frontiers of space open? I don't know. One of my propositions is uh, that if we begin to operate in inner realms, then we are able to take journeys in inner realms. Now, that is a really radical proposition for people who are very used to being in the material world. Like, what? What did you just talk about? And I was like, yeah, that is a possibility. And to enter that kind of realm, we need to understand this non gendered polarities thing. Because once you activate the non gendered polarities, learn how to play with them, you will have, believe it or not, senses that will become open and will show you things that you would not believe you could see sitting right in your room or wondering where you are. Like your imagination could travel. And once your imagination travels, you will see that your soul expands all the way up to stars and planets. What's stopping you? Like if I'm walking in an open wilderness, what is between me and Jupiter, for instance? This is what I've always believed in. I've felt it physically. This is the moment when I'm entering into totally radical territory, and people are like, what? And I'm like, yep. So, yeah, that is a subject I will be covering in my talk on non gendered polarities. How we need to, um, even if we remain in the more practical, physical, material realm, like, hold on, what are you talking about? Even then, the non gendered mastering the non-gendered polarities makes sense. Like, okay, work in daytime, don't work so much at nighttime. Then there is an advanced tier to that. The advanced tier to that is like nighttime. Have you ever thought about why do we need a nighttime? Like, why do we need to sleep like one third of the day away? Is it a waste? No. The fact is that there is a flip side to our reality, and that flip side is in the nighttime. When we enter the dream world, when we enter the world of the psyche. So we have the realm of material and we have the realm of psyche. And so in the realm of psyche that we should be thinking of penetrating into in a safe and organized manner, because that is not a thing to play with. Right? You can reach places in the psyche which you cannot reach with the most advanced human rockets ever, because the universe is large. But there are traditions that say the universe is within you, so we can take dives into that. That is a very risky work, but that can be done through spiritual work or worship, because we believing in God, those of us who do, right? I address those people primarily, and others can watch me out of curiosity and say, okay. But then there are those who probably don't believe in God, but then they have done experiments like mushrooms or altered states of consciousness, and they'd be like, oh, I can maybe see something there, but I don't believe in God. Okay, whatever name you give to the ladder of descent into your psyche, whatever you want to call it, spirit, God, mushrooms, or whatever, same thing. You're descending into psyche, and I'm talking about descending into psyche. My proposition is that the human beings need to gather ourselves more spiritually and in terms of character. So there's a level of spirit in which you deal with the outer only, good manners, good behavior. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to do this and that. And then there is a level where you actually descend into your inner. A great number of human beings have not experienced that. Particularly people of the military-industrial civilization have not had experiences of actually diving into their inner realm, and some have. Okay, and they are often the outliers in the society. So that's where I'm going to conclude this major lecture for now. And the next thing that I'm going to do is to go to the super lecture that is about non-gendered polarities and why we need them. We are talking about the world right now, but I've talked mostly about the manifest world and how to deal with sociology, politics. If you go to my page, thesalammatrix.org, you will notice that I have a model, which I'm calling the Salam Matrix, that talks about four fields in human life: the spiritual, the personal, familial, like your as a person and a family, one person and the family unit, and then socio economy, socioeconomics, and then the ecological, political realm, right? So this is all coming from that. Out of this, these are what are the private or inner realms of family. Personal is like personal is kind of like porous, it just interacts with the outer first. But the spiritual is like the inner aspect, right? And that does define how you operate in other aspects. So this is like the inner. The spirit is the inner. Likewise, ecological, political, and socioeconomic is the outer, and ecological, political is the outer, the most manifest aspect of your being and self, right? This is when you engage absolutely with the outer world, and spirit is when you go absolutely into the inner world. So I've been talking so much about the ecological, political aspect, but then corresponding to that is the spiritual aspect. And when we work more on that aspect, actually, we become more circumspect in other aspects of life. We don't need to consume too much. We don't need to fight too much. We are at peace, potentially. On the other hand, it is very important for those who are more active in the outer aspect, or when we are, as a people, active in the outer aspects, to make sure the outer aspect is good enough so that we can stay in a state of good dreaming, which is very important for human health and psyche. So one day we will get into that, and that will be covered mostly in non-gendered polarities. Thank you for listening to my super lecture about the future of countries in the time of climate shift and what's happening to our world right now, actually, and what should happen, and how are things managed, what's really going on. I hope you enjoyed that. Leave me with your feedback, and if you're pulling some points out. That is great. Let me know what really struck you the most and what would you want me to dive deeper into some of the day. I just do this off the top of my head, by the way. So I, take the name of God and plunge into these matters, pulling together a huge body of knowledge that I've observed over a period of time. All these lectures like impromptu. I don't plan them. Just write down the subject and then dive into those. So um, I will be listening to my own inner movements and looking at the world, what dives I feel are necessary. And if you have a question, drop it my way. I often respond to the question. I'm a bit like AI. I call myself real intelligence. Like I pull together bodies of, data from bodies of knowledge and turn that into useful information. And that's that. This is Ramala Hubb'Allah signing off now. Go to my websites, take a look, start engaging with the content, sharing it, absorbing it, making notes, and let's take it forward. Thank you. Stay blessed.